The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hyatt ballroom sparkled overhead as I watched Michael Chen, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, work his magic on a group of potential investors. My fingers tightened around my champagne glass as I heard him tell the same story he'd been spinning all night. Elena? Oh, she's just a secretary who got lucky. He laughed, gesturing in my direction. Been with the company since the early days. We keep her around for sentimental reasons, you know how it is. I am Elena Reyes, and for the past 7 years, I've been playing a role that would make any Hollywood actress proud. To the world, I was just Michael's executive assistant, the efficient but unremarkable woman who kept his calendar and ordered his lunch. But by Monday morning, everyone would learn just how wrong that assumption was. Another champagne, Ms. Reyes? Thomas, one of the waiters, appeared at my elbow with a fresh glass. He was also one of my most reliable sources of information about the conversations happening at these events. The service staff heard everything. Thank you, Thomas. Anything interesting tonight? He leaned in slightly while exchanging my empty glass. Mr. Chen's been telling everyone the Singapore deal is locked in. Says it's going to double the company's value by next quarter. I nodded, keeping my face carefully neutral. The Singapore deal. Michael's golden ticket to tech industry stardom. Or so he thought. What he didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months quietly meeting with the Singapore investors myself, carefully documenting every promise he'd made and broken. Elena. Michael's voice boomed across the room. Be a dear and fetch the projection files from my office. I want to show our friends here the latest projections. I could feel the investors' dismissive glances sliding over me as I moved toward the exit. To them, I was part of the furniture, useful but unremarkable. Just how I'd planned it. Of course, Mr. Chen, I replied with a practiced smile. Right away. The click of my heels echoed through the empty hallways of Quantum Dynamics headquarters. My simple assistant's outfit, a black Chanel dress and Louboutin pumps that cost more than a month's salary for an actual secretary, whispered against the marble floors. Every detail was calculated, down to the modest pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. In Michael's office, I didn't bother with the projection files. Instead, I went straight to his private safe, my fingers flying over the keypad. 5-4-2-8-9. His mother's birthday, so predictable. Inside was exactly what I expected. Documents detailing the real state of the Singapore deal, including evidence of the bribes he'd offered to push it through. I took photos with a tiny camera disguised as a pen, another piece of evidence for Monday's board meeting. 7 years of playing the perfect assistant had taught me that the best place to hide was in plain sight. No one questioned the secretary. No one wondered why she was always around, always listening, always taking notes. My phone buzzed, a text from David Morgan, head of the board's audit committee. Everything set for Monday? All in place, I typed back. How many board members confirmed? All of them. Chin doesn't suspect anything. I glanced at the ballroom through the office windows, where Michael was still holding court. He's too busy playing king to notice the castle's foundations crumbling. The story of how I ended up here is both simple and complex. 7 years ago, I was fresh out of MIT with dual degrees in computer science and business, plus an MBA from Stanford. I could have had my pick of high-level positions at any tech company. Instead, I chose to become a secretary. But not just any secretary. You see, Quantum Dynamics had been my father's company before Michael Chen orchestrated his hostile takeover. Dad was brilliant with technology but trusted the wrong people. By the time he realized Michael was working against him, it was too late. The stress of losing everything triggered a heart attack that left him in a coma for 3 months. I watched it all happen from my last year at Stanford, helpless to stop it. But I made a promise then. I would get back what was stolen from my family. Not through quick revenge but through careful, methodical planning. Getting hired as Michael's assistant was almost too easy. He had a weakness for pretty, seemingly harmless women, and my carefully constructed resume, which buried my advanced degrees under years of secretarial experience, painted me as the perfect combination of competent and unthreatening. Your father's company is in good hands, he told me during the interview, not realizing who I was. I'd changed my last name to my mother's maiden name, Reyes, and he never made the connection to Joseph Martinez, the founder he'd betrayed. Over the years, I became indispensable. I managed Michael's life with terrifying efficiency while slowly, carefully building my plan. Every mistake he made, every shortcut he took, Every illegal decision, I documented it all. But more importantly, I started buying company stock through various shell companies, taking advantage of Michael's tendency to ignore the details of boring administrative work. Now, 7 years later, I owned 51% of Quantum Dynamics. Michael just didn't know it yet. Elena. Michael's voice carried down the hallway. Those projections? I grabbed the files he wanted and headed back to the ballroom, my hidden camera heavy with evidence in my pocket. In less than 48 hours, everything would change. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of fake smiles and careful observations. I watched Michael promise the investors impossible returns, watched him take credit for innovations he'd stolen from other companies, watched him play the role of the brilliant CEO while treating me like furniture. As the event wound down, he caught me in a quiet moment. Good work tonight, Elena. I don't say it enough, but I don't know what I'd do without you. For a moment, I saw genuine warmth in his eyes and something twisted in my chest. That was the thing about Michael, he wasn't purely evil. He could be kind, charming, even caring in his way. But he was also a man who had destroyed my father's life work without a second thought, who had built his success on stolen ideas and broken promises. Thank you, Mr. Chen, I replied softly. That means a lot. He smiled, patting my shoulder like one might pat a faithful dog. Why don't you take Monday morning off? You've earned it. I kept my face carefully blank. Oh, I couldn't possibly miss Monday's board meeting. You'll need someone to take the minutes. Always so dedicated, he chuckled. Fine, but take Tuesday off instead. As I watched him walk away, I thought about what would happen Monday morning. The evidence I'd gathered, the shares I'd accumulated, the allies I'd made, it would all come together in a perfect storm that would sweep Michael Chen out of the company he'd stolen. But standing there in the emptying ballroom watching the cleaning staff begin their work, I realized something important. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about setting things right. About proving that sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one they should have feared all along. I helped Thomas and the other servers clean up just as I did every event. Big changes coming, he murmured as we stacked chairs. You have no idea, I replied, thinking about the severance packages I'd already arranged for all the support staff, far more generous than anything Michael had ever offered. Later that night, I visited my father in the rehabilitation facility where he was still recovering from his stroke. He was asleep, but I sat with him anyway, holding his hand. 2 more days, Papa, I whispered. 2 more days and I'll give you back everything he took. The night nurse, Maria, brought me a cup of coffee. She'd gotten used to my late visits over the years. Big day Monday? She asked, noting my distraction. I smiled, thinking of all the preparations, all the pieces falling into place. You could say that. By this time next week, everything will be different. As I drove home in the pre-dawn hours, I thought about Michael's words at the gala. Just a secretary who got lucky. He had no idea how wrong he was. Luck had nothing to do with it. Monday was coming, and with it, the moment I'd spent 7 years preparing for. The only question was, would the price of justice be higher than even I had calculated? Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, the San Francisco fog already burning off by the time I arrived at Quantum Dynamics headquarters. I was early as usual, making sure everything was perfectly in place for what would become the most memorable board meeting in the company's history. The evidence files were arranged in precise order. Financial records, email trails, recorded conversations, and most importantly, stock ownership documents. 7 years of meticulous planning wrapped in manila folders and digital drives. Michael strode in at 8:45, radiating confidence after the successful gala. Coffee, Elena? Already on your desk, Mr. Chen, I replied, noting how he didn't even glance at me as he passed. And the board members are beginning to arrive. What would I do without you? He called over his shoulder, the same empty praise he'd been offering for years. You're about to find out, I whispered to myself, checking my phone. A text from David Morgan confirmed that all board members were present and the additional participants were in position. At precisely 9 a.m., I entered the boardroom with my tablet and recording equipment, standard items for the secretary taking minutes. Michael was at the head of the table, reviewing the Singapore deal presentations one last time. Good morning, everyone, he began as the last member took their seat. We have a full agenda today, but first I'm excited to share some updates about our expansion into the Asian market. Actually, David Morgan interrupted, There's been a change to the agenda. He nodded to me. Ms. Reyes. I stood up, smoothing my charcoal gray Armani suit, no more secretary's attire. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I turned to face Michael directly. Mr. Chen, I believe you're sitting in my chair. The confusion on his face would have been comical if the moment weren't so tense. What are you talking about? Elena, take your seat and stop interrupting. That's Ms. Martinez to you, I said quietly, watching recognition finally flicker in his eyes. Yes, Martinez. As in Joseph Martinez's daughter. Martinez. One of the board members leaned forward. The founder. I clicked a button on my tablet and the boardroom screen came to life with documentation. 7 years ago, Michael Chen orchestrated an illegal hostile takeover of my father's company. Today, I'm here to present evidence of that and subsequent violations of corporate law, SEC regulations and fiduciary duty. Michael's face had gone pale. This is ridiculous. She's just a secretary dash. A secretary with degrees from MIT and Stanford, David Morgan cut in. And more importantly, the majority shareholder of Quantum Dynamics. The room erupted in chaos. Michael jumped to his feet. That's impossible. I own controlling interest dash. Through your shell companies? I asked calmly, bringing up more documents. Interesting how those same companies have been slowly selling shares over the past 5 years. Would you like to see who bought them? I never approved dash. You did actually. I started playing a series of video clips. Here you are signing the transfer authorizations without reading them. Here's you approving the stock sales while talking on your phone. Here's you delegating your boring paperwork to your Justice Secretary, complete with your notarized signature on the delegation of authority. The board members were flipping through the evidence packets that had appeared at their seats. 7 years of documented fraud, theft and corporate espionage laid out in devastating detail. The Singapore deal, one board member said, looking up sharply. Is it really dash? Falling apart as we speak, I confirmed. The investors pulled out this morning after discovering Mr. Chen's attempted bribes. Fortunately, I pulled up new documents. I've spent the last 6 months negotiating a legitimate deal with them under a different corporate entity. One that will actually benefit Quantum Dynamics rather than just inflating Mr. Chen's ego. Michael lunged for the door, but 2 SEC agents were already there. Michael Chen, one began, we have some questions about certain financial transactions. What followed was 3 hours of methodical destruction of everything Michael had built through fraud and theft. Every scheme, every stolen innovation, every manipulated number was exposed. The board watched in stunned silence as their brilliant CEO was revealed as a criminal who had nearly destroyed the company while enriching himself. Why? Michael finally asked as the SEC agents prepared to escort him out. Why spend 7 years as a secretary if you could have exposed me immediately? I walked over to him, 7 years of practiced subservience falling away with each step. Because immediate revenge wasn't enough. I wanted you to experience what my father felt, watching helplessly as everything you built is taken away by someone you trusted. The difference is I did it legally. Just then the boardroom door opened and a familiar figure wheeled himself in. Papa, I said softly. My father looked better than he had in years, alert and clear-eyed. The rehabilitation had been expensive but worth every penny. Michael's face went even paler. Joseph, he whispered. You're alive? Recovered? My father's voice was strong. Yes, thanks to my daughter. She didn't just save the company, Michael. She saved me. The next few hours were a blur of legal documents, press statements and corporate restructuring. By the end of the day, I was officially installed as CEO with my father returning as Chief Innovation Officer. The board, impressed by both my business acumen and the legitimate deals I'd arranged, voted unanimously for the transition. As the sun set over San Francisco Bay, I stood in what was now my office, looking at the city lights coming on. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Ms. Martinez? It was Thomas, still in his server's uniform. The staff is wondering. Your jobs are safe, I assured him. In fact, everyone's getting raises and better benefits. No more treating support staff like they're invisible. His relief was palpable. Thank you. And congratulations. We always knew you were more than just a secretary. After he left, I pulled out my grandmother's pearls, The ones I'd worn so often as part of my disguise. They weren't just jewelry. They were a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, that patience and intelligence can overcome brute force and arrogance. My father wheeled himself in as I was reviewing the company's org chart. "You did it, Mija," he said softly. "But was it worth 7 years of your life?" I showed him the changes I was already implementing: better working conditions, innovation incentives, ethical business practices. I didn't just want to expose him, Papa. I wanted to understand this company from the ground up, to know every strength and weakness. Now I can make it what you always dreamed it could be. 1 year later, Quantum Dynamics is thriving. Our legitimate expansion into Asia has exceeded all projections, and our ethical business practices have attracted top talent and loyal customers. Michael Chen pled guilty to multiple charges and is serving time in a federal prison. The story of the Secretary CEO made headlines for a while, but that's not the legacy I care about. What matters is that every morning I walk through the office and greet every employee by name, from the janitors to the executives. Because I learned during my 7 years of observation that a company's true strength lies not in its stock price or market share, but in the people who show up every day to make it work. My father's health continues to improve, and he's back to innovating, now with proper protection for his intellectual property. The board meetings are collaborative rather than combative, and our support staff is among the best paid and most respected in the industry. As for me, I keep my old secretary's desk in a corner of my office as a reminder. Not of the deception but of the lesson. That true power comes not from titles or corner offices, but from understanding every level of an organization, from respecting every contribution, and from knowing that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. Last week I received a letter from Michael, written from prison. "You could have destroyed me immediately," he wrote. "Why take 7 years?" I didn't reply, but the answer is simple. Because some lessons need to be learned slowly, because true change requires understanding, not just punishment, and because sometimes the longest road is the one that leads to the most complete victory. Every morning as I pass through the lobby of Quantum Dynamics, I see new employees reading the company's mission statement, prominently displayed on the wall. It's quite different from Michael's version. Ours talks about innovation, ethics, and respect for all. But my favorite part is the small quote at the bottom, added at my father's suggestion. "Never underestimate those who serve, for in their quiet observation lies wisdom that power often misses." It's signed Elena Martinez, former secretary, current CEO. And that, perhaps, is the greatest revenge of all, not just reclaiming what was stolen but transforming it into something better than it ever was before. Something worthy of 7 years of patience, planning, and yes, even serving coffee with a smile while being dismissed as just a secretary. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about winning in a way that makes victory mean something more than mere triumph. It's about creating change that lasts long after the drama of revenge has faded. And that's a lesson worth taking notes on.